Xbox has a problem, and it doesn't find me joy talking about this. But honestly, I feel like I need to talk about it. I feel like I need to talk about it because as someone who personally loves the brand of Xbox, or at least what it used to be, what I grew up with, the Xbox that I know, um, the first Xbox was actually the first console that was gifted to me by my parents and got me hooked on the ecosystem of Xbox. And I remember when it came time to upgrade to the next console, Xbox 360 was a no-brainer for me. I was just so in love with what Xbox used to be, with how passionate they were. They were the new kid on the block at one point. And now I feel like the modern day Xbox is a shell of what it once was. And I feel like a lot of people have these theories or ideas as what Xbox needs to do or what Xbox is doing wrong. And every time there's like some kind of news outlet reporting on Xbox, it's always very negative. There's never really anything great to say. So I hate to add more fuel to that fire. I hate hopping into it on the negative side because personally I am rooting for Xbox and I do want Xbox to be in a position. They are a must-buy console. But currently as they stand right now, they're struggling and they're struggling hard. Most recently, I feel like there's been a lot of criticisms as far as how they've been handling Activision, the Activision purchase. A lot of people are saying they should step away. A lot of people are saying they should pursue further and that this is pretty much a really bad look for Xbox. Personally, when it comes to the whole Activision Blizzard purchasing issue, I feel like this shouldn't be an Xbox problem. These are legalities that are hard to get across and hard to maneuver around, and I feel like Xbox has done their best to kind of maneuver it in the best way possible. With that being said, I feel like a lot of people, specifically Xbox gamers, are really upset that Xbox couldn't close the deal by now for Activision because they desperately want Xbox to be in a position where they're releasing games consistently. And everyone knew had they bought Activision, had they been able to purchase Activision, a lot of those titles would go day and date on Game Pass, which would say that Xbox is releasing tons of games. But I feel like this is not really what the conversation should be about because I feel like Microsoft is obviously everyone knows Microsoft is a big company, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're not dumb. They knew that purchasing Activision Blizzard was going to be a difficult task and that even though you have the money, there's a lot of legalities, and they understood this going into it and they were ready to tackle that problem. I feel like they should have had a better plan in place with the studios that they already had, so where they weren't reliant on Activision. I feel like they should have already been releasing games that no one would care whether or not they bought Activision. Like, let's repaint the picture. If Halo Infinite did amazing, if people were still playing Forza, if they had games that were consistently being released and the conversation wasn't, oh, Xbox doesn't have games, then people wouldn't care about Activision Blizzard being purchased because they wouldn't need Activision or Blizzard to be purchased. They would have already had their big Xbox games already. So I feel like that shouldn't really be the Xbox problem. I feel like there's a bigger problem at foot. Now the next big thing that people like to talk about is Redfall. Redfall is a game that isn't really releasing in a state that's considered done or finished because they are going to still be patched a long ways down the road. They're releasing it with only the resolution mode, and without the performance mode is being released with online only with the Nouveau. So there's definitely tons of issues when it comes to talking about Redfall as a game. But if we're really to look at Redfall was in production by Arcane Studios prior to Bethesda being purchased. This game, whether or not Xbox had purchased them, was always going to release in this state, I believe, if not worse. I don't think Microsoft is at fault 100% for Redfall not being released in a good state, for the game not really looking fun. I feel like that's an Arcane problem. I feel like Arcane stepped away from what they did best, and now is making more like Arcane story-based games, and now they're moving towards this like multiplayer vampire game that nobody asked for. And I feel like, again, that's an Arcane issue. And yes, Arcane is under Microsoft, so overall it is a Microsoft issue. But when Microsoft bought Arcane Studios, they were already making Redfall. So they weren't going to cancel that. They're already in production of that. And pretty much Microsoft is the face of it now So they're gonna bear the blunt of it. They're gonna bear all the issues. And they're gonna try to do their best to at least release this game when possible. So again, I don't feel like Redfall lies solely on Microsoft. And I know everyone likes to say Microsoft doesn't have games, Xbox doesn't release any games. Well, I mean, if we're looking at just this year, they released Minecraft Legends. They're about to release Redfall. They released Hi-Fi Rush. They're about to release Starfield. They're about to release Forza Motorsports. They've released games this year. It's just not things that people want to play. Versus we look at Sony PlayStation, they only have Spider-Man 2 that we know about. And everybody wants to play it, so everyone's okay with that. So I feel like the issue isn't just that Xbox doesn't have games. I think they don't have games that people want to play. And more importantly, they don't really have an identity to their games. I feel like when you buy a Nintendo Switch, you know what games you're going to play. Whether it's Fire Emblem, that's a strategy RPG, or Mario, that's a platformer. Whatever game you get, there's a certain level of quality. There's a certain type of fun you're going to get from that game. And I feel like this is where we run into the issue of Xbox. They don't have an identity of what their games are. People aren't buying Xbox to play Gears of War anymore. They're not buying it to play Halo or Fable anymore. And I know everyone wants to say, well, Halo, Gears of War, Fable, these aren't IPs that are relevant anymore. Well, why aren't they relevant? Because Xbox hasn't allowed them to be relevant. They haven't made any groundbreaking breakthroughs in their genre. They're not consistently pushing the envelope on their past. They're not even sticking to what they do best anymore. They're just making these empty, kind of soulless games that no one really cares about. And this is when we get to what Xbox identity is now. Xbox, when you think of Xbox, the only thing that you can connect Xbox to now is Game Pass. And don't get me wrong, I love the idea of Game Pass. I love the idea of paying a cheap monthly price and then you get a whole backlog of games. The problem though is that's not going to sell systems. You need new games to sell this new hardware. Technically, I can just get the Xbox One for a cheaper price than the Xbox Series and sign up for Game Pass, and I would save myself some money and play the same things that Xbox Series have. Because the games that are exclusive to the Xbox Series, Redfall, are things I don't want anyway, so why would I buy them? So I feel like Game Pass is a great start and a great foundation, but it shouldn't be the whole focus of Xbox anymore. Xbox needs to regain their place where they're passionately focused on making great games that resemble the Xbox brand. And I feel like Xbox doesn't know how to do that anymore. And that's why they're buying companies like Bethesda. They're buying companies like Activision in hopes that Bethesda and Activision are going to make some solid AAA games that people can go to the Xbox for. The problem with that, though, is you're not helping them make their games. You're just giving them money and say, here, make games for me. So when Bethesda releases a game, that's a Bethesda game. If you were to purchase Activision and they made a game, that'd be an Activision game or a Blizzard game. No one ever is going to connect Call of Duty to Xbox. It's always going to be Activision's Call of Duty, play it best on Xbox or something. But it's never going to be the Xbox game, which is where Xbox is going to struggle with unless they create games that are exclusive to Xbox, that people want to play on Xbox, and that resemble their brand. And I feel like this is where Xbox is kind of like, they calmed down on how passionate they were. When they broke into the market space and took Nintendo's second place spot, it's because they were passionate and they were hungry for it and they wanted to do it. But now, Microsoft is such a big company, they don't need the game division to keep them afloat. Versus Nintendo needs the game division to make them money. So they push the best games they can. Sony's game division is the best thing in Sony's portfolio. So they push that. Xbox is not the biggest thing in Microsoft's portfolio. So it's not their main focus. If Microsoft can just pay other people to make games for them, they're going to pay people to make games for them. And that's the big problem with Xbox right now, is they don't have a brand, they don't have a idea or something that the consumers can get behind and say, look, that's an Xbox game. Like Nintendo can with Zelda and Mario, like PlayStation can with Horizon and God of War. No one can say I buy Xbox because they have this game out here. No, they say I have Xbox because Game Pass is the best value on the market. And that's fine if you want to be a value brand. That's fine. But if you want to get back to the position where you're pushing the envelope, where you're groundbreaking and you're making headlines for good things, then you got to regain that focus of making passionate games. Now, is it too late for Xbox? And I think this is the next big problem that people like to mention, is that maybe Xbox should just step away from the console space and go to making third-party games. And I would hate that for Xbox. I feel like if Xbox took any more of their feet off the gas, PlayStation is going to have next to no real competitors, because let's face it, Nintendo and PlayStation are operating on two different scopes of the gaming landscape. Nintendo has their fans, Sony has their fans. And I feel like Xbox fans are the last thing challenging Sony to really push the envelope on what Sony does best. And I want that kind of friction, that kind of tug of pull within the gaming landscape to keep pushing innovation, keep pushing next big things, not letting anyone rest on their laurels. And I really want that. And I know Xbox has the power, the studio, and the talent to do so if they just regain their focus on what they do best, what they've always done. And I feel like there's still time. I feel like every company goes through this kind of phase. If you look at Nintendo, they had their peaks and valleys. And you look at Sony, and they had their peaks and valleys. And I feel like currently we're just in a very, very deep valley for Xbox, but they can come back, and they can come back on top, because what they have with Game Pass is a phenomenal idea. It is a great bargain. It is a great thing. They have the quote unquote strongest system in the game. They have the foundation for what could be a very, very great business strategy if they get the fuel to keep that fire going. If they get some solid Xbox exclusives that breathe Xbox and say this is why you buy Xbox, then they can really change the way games are developed and the way people look at games and how we buy games. And I really hope Xbox can get their shit together so that we can regain this kind of respect for Xbox. I feel like now it's just, we just don't respect Xbox right now. And I really want to get to a position where we respect them the same way we respect Nintendo, the same way we respect PlayStation. Anyways, I know I've been rambling a lot and I've been saying a lot. Those are all my thoughts. It's just been eating at me for a cool minute, and I kind of want to get that out there for people. If you like the video, do me a favor, like the video. Please consider subscribing, as it does help me out tons. With that, I'll see you guys on the next video.